Hi everyone. Yeah, so my name is Jenny Price. I am one of the professional advisors based up in Scotland. I've been with UNICEF UK for over 6 years, having been an education officer and a primary teacher previously, both of which roles involved RRSA. So I have seen the positive impact of RRSA across my own schools, across my local authority, and for the last 6 years nationally across many education settings. So through teaching and learning about rights, we're aiming to empower children with knowledge and to take action on the things that matter to them. So, which is why campaigning and taking action is a key part to RRSA and our outcomes. For Gold Schools, we hope to see children and young people engage in action to campaign or advocate for the rights of children locally and globally. So to inspire your work in this area, in our next session, we will hear from a fantastic panel of speakers talk about the power of campaigning. So first, Rebecca Dallison, our Head of Campaigns and Mobilisation here at UNICEF UK, who will present an overview of UNICEF UK's approach to mobilising the UK public to campaign and to speak up in support of child rights issues. We will also hear 2 case studies of children and young people taking actions from Fareham Academy and Chesterton Primary School. So over to you, Becky.
Hi, can just check that everyone can hear me, just checking the sound. Excellent. Hi, everyone. So as Jenny said, my name's Becky and I lead UNICEF UK's awesome campaigns team, as I might say. So campaigning, activism, advocacy, speaking up, using your voice, protesting, raising awareness, creating change. All of these different words are used to describe what my team try and inspire people to do. So thank you so much for having me along to talk about it today. We firmly believe that together we can achieve the change that we want to see in our local communities, in our country, and even if we're being really bold across the world through the power of campaigning. Campaigning is about taking specific organised actions, like taking part in Outright, which is our campaign for schools that I know that many rights respecting schools take part in, to bring about positive change on an issue through influencing those that are in power to act. I've worked at UNICEF UK now for 5 years, and here I lead a campaigns team that work to make policy and political change in the UK and for children internationally, with and for children. You can see my brilliant team on the slide. I think they're such a lovely team. I couldn't resist putting their photos on. We do that by developing inspiring, effective campaigns, and we build a movement of active citizens, children and adults as their allies who champion children's rights and use their voice to make the world better for and with children. And before I pass over to the brilliant schools who are going to talk about the campaigning they've done, I thought I'd just give you a bit of a sneak peek behind the curtain as to how we work at UNICEF UK. Our role involves a lot of working across the organisation with our network. We've got a network of 160,000 activists. They're all adults across the country. We work with colleagues in our media team, in our ambassador relations team, our political affairs team and our marketing team. And incredibly importantly, we work with young people to work together to create an environment whereby people in power, politicians, feel empowered, feel emboldened and informed to make changes that protect or advance children's rights. Could I move to the next slide, please? So here are some of our current campaigns. I won't labour on them too much, but we try and divide our time into an international and domestic framing. So in the UK, we're calling on the UK government for something called a baby and toddler guarantee. This was in response to noticing that the support given to new parents was very disparate, depending on where you lived, in terms of health visiting, in terms of mental health support, in terms of early education and childcare. So we're asking the UK government for a baby and toddler guarantee that makes sure parents are informed in terms of what services their babies and toddlers are entitled to wherever they're born, and make sure they receive those services. On the international side, we're really concerned about the impact that crises around the world, from COVID to conflicts to climate change, are having on children and their health. So we're campaigning for the UK government to fund and prioritise countries to deliver healthcare services like nutrition support, vaccinations, access to healthcare workers. Next slide, please. We are just starting, really excitingly, to develop work on climate change, which will be a big campaign lasting until 2026. We're looking for the UK government to really show an understanding publicly of the impact that climate change is having on children, but also to become a champion for children impacted by climate change, particularly by supporting children in communities around the world to adapt to climate change. We really clearly support calls for mitigation and reducing our emissions, but we're also aware we can't get away from the fact that climate change is happening. So we need to support children to still be able to access education in a changing climate, still be able to access healthcare in a changing climate. So we're starting to develop that now and look out for more public information on that over the next year or so. And finally, the campaign that wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be the success it is without our Rights Respecting Schools Outright, which is our advocacy campaign for young people, where we provide learning materials that empower children to take action on their rights and the rights of children around the world. As I mentioned, this year's theme, as I mentioned before with climate, this year's theme is climate adaptation. And so young people, children all over the country will be sharing their views about climate change, sharing their views about how we adapt to climate change and what the government can do about it with MPs, with the public and with their local media ahead of COP28 this November. So it's just a flavour of the different topics that we work on. Next slide, please. So I don't know if I need to make the case to this audience as to why children should campaign, but children have a really important role to play in campaigning to create change. Their voices matter and they have the right to say what they think. And I believe, I would say this as head of campaigns, but I believe it's important that they explore campaigning. Firstly, because campaigning on issues that affect them can make a real difference by signing petitions, making videos, writing blogs, speaking to decision makers like their local MP or councillor, speaking to the local media. Children can show those in power just how much they care about children's rights, both in the UK and around the world. Secondly, under the UNCRC, governments are duty bearers. That means they have to fulfil the obligations set in the convention so that the rights of children and young people are met. And as rights holders, it is vital that children and young people are supported to speak out on the issues that affect them and that they're heard by key decision makers at every level. While duty bearers hold the responsibility of making sure rights are met, children and young people can play a really key role in promoting their rights as well through raising their voices to ask for change, including through activities like Outright. And they can help us show that there is a mass of support for what we're asking, which is a big deal for my team. We want to show the government, who obviously rely on public support, that there is a massive support for what we're asking them to do, both across the UK, but also in their specific constituencies. But why else should children campaign other than it's the right thing to do and they can make a massive difference? It also helps them to develop their skills. They develop strategic thinking skills, they develop communication skills, they develop teamwork skills, confidence. Campaigning is full of creativity, it's fun. But the one I really wanted to touch on of the skills on the slide is resilience. Campaigning takes a really long time. You get knocked back along the way, and you can't really work or be a campaigner if you don't have resilience. So I think it's just a really, it's so important for helping children become really well-rounded with all of those skills. Next slide, please. So this is my kind of peek under the hood, really. How does UNICEF UK develop a campaign? So we ask some big questions of ourselves when we're deciding where to focus our energy. We ask ourselves, what do children care about? How are they affected by this issue and how widespread is it? We check that the government can actually make a change on this issue. They may not have the responsibility. We also ask if the UK public care about it. Can we get them to care about it? Because as I mentioned, the UK public is so powerful. And we also ask, what can we say that's different on this issue? Because there are NGOs everywhere campaigning on any topic you can imagine. So what do we bring to this conversation? And once we've decided on a topic, we work out what we want the government to do, who is responsible for making the decision to do what we want them to do, and then we consider why they're not doing it already. So it could be that they literally don't know that this is an option. They haven't heard our solution. They don't believe the public care, it's too expensive. They don't know or even maybe believe that there isn't actually a problem. And then once we've mapped all that out, we spend a lot of time thinking about what we can do as UNICEF UK to convince them, giving them the evidence they need, having some direct conversations with decision makers, supporting children and young people and the public to speak out, getting information into the media, all those different things. And then from there, we develop something called a barrier analysis. And we have various tools to answer all these different questions that lead us to developing something called a theory of change. So if I could go to the next slide, which I think is an example theory of change. This is a very top line one. And I'm not going to read through it, but this is for our Early Moments Matter campaign for the Baby and Toddler Guarantee, where we decide what we want to achieve, we work out how we get there, and we come up with activities. And before I pass over to my esteemed colleagues talking about this subject with me, if we go on to the next slide, that theory of change leads us to decide activities that support our work. And you can see some of them on this slide here, just as a bit of inspiration. These can be running petitions, asking people to write to their MP, engaging the media, both as UNICEF UK and as campaigners, running social media campaigns, having events like in Parliament, writing policy reports, working across the sector to really amplify our voice. And again, really importantly, engaging rights holders like the children you work with. And that's either through contributing to what our campaigns look like or using their voice to amplify them. So I hope that's been a bit of a helpful peek under the hood for you. I'm going to pass to my next colleague, who's going to talk through some examples of how schools have been campaigning.
Thank you, Becky, so much. It's Kathy again. I'm just going to pop back on quickly. And that was been really, really interesting to hear a bit more about how we approach campaigning at UNICEF UK. And I know in the Q&A there are people popping up to ask how you can become a UNICEF UK activist. So there's links put in the Q&A responses. So hopefully we'll promote the current campaigns and give you more information on how to get involved for those of you who want to get involved. So you might see a flurry of activity, Becky, hopefully off the back of this, which would be great. As Becky was saying, we're going to hear from two rights respecting schools now. First, we're going to go over to Whitney, who works at Chesterton Primary School, and she's going to talk about their approach to campaigning. And I spotted in the Q&A that there was a question about younger children, and Whitney's actually going to share her approach across the whole school, so including those younger children in the primary school. So over to you, Whitney.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I start, you might notice I've got a bit of rasp, just recovering from illness, so hopefully you can hear me clearly. As everyone has mentioned, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for including us. The children are very proud to know that their stories are going to be shared today. We did discuss with the children that we have been given the privilege to speak today, and they are just absolutely overjoyed. So thank you for having us. Next slide, please. I wanted to think about our campaigning journey, and we are a reaccredited Gold Rights Respecting School and have been on this journey for a really long time. And when we first started, we had established our class charters, we were making links to the curriculum where we could, really just starting to get the ground running. But we were trying to think of how to get the children engaged in campaigns. So we established what we were already doing. These campaigns you'll have seen in many primary schools across the country. And we use that as a stepping stool of getting the children involved, linking rights to that. But these campaigns didn't really have rights learning in them, and the children couldn't articulate why they were taking part. They didn't understand the deeper issues or the concerns, or really more than dressing up. And while they're great and they provide amazing funding and awareness for lots of issues, as a rights respecting school, they were sort of our starting point. But that led us to a great journey of where we are now. Next slide, please. We have reached a point where our children are they are the most empowered. They feel like they can take on the world. And again, this stems from being a rights respecting gold school. Our rights learning is in all curriculum areas. And because of that, the children really do truly believe that their voice matters, that the adults in the school will take them seriously, whether it's a classroom issue, a school issue, a local issue. They know if they bring something forward to a member of the team, they will help to facilitate to get the ball rolling for the children. So there's a few examples on screen that, again, the children have wanted to share. I'll let them, again, have their voice being heard on what they wanted to represent as our school. The image on the left is the children with a member from the co-op, the supermarket. After COVID, the children really were aware of the crisis that lots of families were in and wanted to do something in the school that could help our local community. The children then campaigned to a range of supermarkets in our local area for funding and actually received a grant from Co-op, which they then used to facilitate a food bank within our school setting, which families can still use to this day. The children write letters to members of Parliament on any issue that they find is important to them. And I think, as all of us know, that the children realising their voices are important is at the real heart of this. We had one of our members of Parliament in because the children in our really younger years, nursery reception, year 1, their playground is near an entrance on a busy road, and actually there was lots of litter, and they decided they were going to make some videos about it. They sent them to the Member of Parliament and rallied for some more bins to be put up in the local area. And actually, as a result of their activism, even at that really young age, the children were able to make change. Next slide, please. But it wasn't an easy journey to get the children to feel so confident in using their voices. It required a lot of really strategic thinking and really knowing our community. These are a few examples of each month some of the campaigns that take part in school, and they're planned through in the curriculum. So in September, like most schools, we have a harvest festival, but we don't call it harvest, we call it We Scare Hunger. The children really look about issues of food poverty, about access to healthy foods right from nursery to year 6, and that's a widespread whole school campaign. But we also have year-specific campaigns that we've built into the curriculum that change year on year. Sometimes we stick with them for a few years, but actually knowing the children what they're interested in, we're flexible to make those changes so that the children really feel that the issues that are important to them are being given, that they are being able to explore those. Our year 6s have kept on with a campaign called We Are Silent that they do in December. They learn about children around the world in various locations that cannot access their right to education. And then they take a day of silence at the end of December before the holidays, where they are silent for the day to stand in solidarity with children that aren't having their voices being heard. And again, it's the curriculum learning that allows the children to feel so deeply knowledgeable about these issues. They're not a tokenistic, they are really well planned for, so that they get the heart of whatever issue is they want to then take action on. I think the biggest part of our campaigning journey being so successful is really knowing the community, allowing them to come forward with issues that they feel are important, listening to the children and giving them a range of opportunities to come forward and have people that they feel that they can talk to about these things. But campaigning is definitely a widespread, everyday occurrence within the school community. Next slide, please. One of the most successful and long-standing campaigns we have, and you will have heard some this morning if you were with us, use the word me to we. And all of our campaigns, as you've seen on the previous slide, we use the word we in what we call them, because it is a collective activism. But We Walk for Water is the biggest campaign we do every year. It is long-standing and is well established within our curriculum. And again, it comes back to knowing our community and listening to what the children find important. We have over 50 home languages spoken in our school, and many of our families come from communities that didn't have access to clean drinking water or sanitation facilities. And because of that, this is a deeply ingrained issue that lots of our families feel really, really deeply about. And if you go to the next slide, please, we've thought really carefully about how to make sure that the children from nursery to year 6, year on and year out, get to develop their understanding of these issues. Next slide, please. In our curriculum for PSHE, I've just chosen a couple of examples of learning objectives that the children will look at and unpick in their curriculum time. And it's just one, it's not a standoff lesson, they will have several lessons, but I've just chosen a few as examples to share with you. So in the nursery, the children will physically look at the difference between clean and dirty drinking water. They will really explore that, talk about it at a child-friendly level, again linking into their rights. Moving through the school, children understanding that not everyone is enjoying that right and why that might be. Our year 4 children start looking at things like clean water and sanitation and how infrastructure, where you live in the world, how that might affect you being able to enjoy your right. And again, all the way up to our year 6s looking at the moral obligation of global communities and what responsibility they have to make sure that people are accessing their basic rights. Because of this deep knowledge, this deep learning that the children have in these issues, when it comes time to those days of action, they are empowered, they are fueled with knowledge, they understand their rights, and they have spent the time learning about it, that they feel confident in sharing that awareness that they've built. So yes, we have days of action, but they are well thought of and well prepared for. And yes, you know, being primary, the children love to make posters, they love to post videos on our Twitter account, spreading their message. They make leaflets, they put them through the post, they write letters to our local members of Parliament and any change makers they feel like should be involved. But because they understand the issues more than just an event, they really feel like they can make a change. Next slide, please. Now, that We Walk for Water is just one example of what we do, and often people say, as we've just seen, there's so many really great opportunities for children when campaigning, but if you're trying to convince somebody of so what's the point, what do the children get out of all of this, it's that spark, it's that ignition. Our children really do feel that they can make a change, that their voices are heard. They use their rights learning in a way that empowers them to take action, whether it's in their classroom with their families. They believe that the adults will listen to them because we show them that. Similar to the safeguarding, the children need to know that we take them seriously, and actually if they're passionate about something and they've got an idea of how they want to make change, we will help facilitate them to do that. I think at our school we just had our accreditation for gold again, and one of the children in that process spoke about being able to find the thing that makes them themselves at school, and part of that is being able to explore any issue that they feel is important to them and feel like they can actually have a voice in making change. And again, campaigning is about that, making a difference, and the children having a say in what is important to them and the decisions that are going to be made about them. I think as early this morning, someone mentioned about the language of rights that children use when they're 5 years old to 10 years old. If we're instilling that belief by the time that they are, you know, in secondary school and young adults, if campaigning is part of their everyday experience, we can hopefully have some really amazing global citizens moving forward. So it is a very quick whistle-stop tour. I would be happy to speak with you all day about campaigning, but if you have any further questions, please do let us know. Would love to share all the campaigns with you, but definitely a big advocate myself for campaigning with young people.
Whitney, thank you so much. And there are lots of questions coming through on the Q&A, but we are tight for time, so we're going to keep moving forward if that's okay. But it was really, really lovely to hear your approach to campaigning in your school, and so wonderful to see that you've got that structure around it, that link to the curriculum, but also children's voices are so prominent in that actually your children can tailor those campaigns to what they're interested in and to what they're passionate about, and that's what we want to hear, that their voices, they're at the centre of this process. So lovely, thank you so much. As I say, we're going to move on to our next school now, and I am fortunate enough to welcome Wesley from Fareham Academy, who is going to talk about their approach to Outright. So at Fareham Academy, they've been involved in Outright for the last few years, and Wesley is going to share the approach that they take. So over to you, Wesley.
Hello everyone, thank you. Can I just check you can hear me all right? I know there was a sound earlier. I got the thumbs up. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Can you just move the slide forward then, and I'll sort of start by talking about our journey. We're at a very different point in our journey to the way that some of the schools that we've heard from this morning, and from the earlier campaigning session sort of spoke about. We only joined the Rights Respecting School programme in January 2022, and it was something that I personally feel quite passionate about, but it was something that my former PGC mentor planted in my head about 8 years ago. And it's something that I've been able to, as I've sort of gained a bit more prominence in the school and was given the opportunity to be seconded to SLT, I was able to sort of run with it, and it was sort of super exciting for me. We achieved the bronze award in the back end of August, so we've only been involved with the programme for 18 months, as I've said. And the key thing is that the programme really closely aligns with our school's core values of resilience, aspiration and kindness. And I'm really lucky that I've got an absolutely wonderful group, a student steering group, who have been so sort of passionate about being involved with the campaigning. And in our last academic year, we worked through our Silver Action Plan. We developed sort of a rights charter for the school, and they managed to sort of lead on a student voice, where about 50% of our student cohort took part. We are a sort of a medium-sized secondary school of about 800 on the south coast of England, sort of between Portsmouth and Southampton. So to get about 400 children taking part in the sort of out in the survey that we put together, I was really, really proud of. So I'm here to talk a little bit about Outright. So the way that we approached it is all of our Year 8 cohort took part in the Outright campaign on what we call a RAC Day, which took place in January of 2023. Our RAC days are PSHE themed days, which take place 6 times over the course of the academic year, where the whole secondary school's timetable is collapsed. We all follow, as staff and as the students as well, follow a bespoke timetable for that day. And I'm very lucky that our sort of PSHE coordinator works very closely with me to build in opportunities for the students to do more, work with the Rights Respecting Schools programme as part of the RAC days. So the whole of the Year 8 cohort of 180 children took part last year in January. And as part of this campaign, the sort of highlight was that we finished with a letter that the students put together to our local MP, Suella Braverman. And we did receive 2 different replies from her, one from her constituency office and one from a parliamentary office. Following that, we then managed to get our successful accreditation of silver at the back end of last summer. And we've started the current academic year by sort of mapping out how we're going to focus on the Outright campaign again, with a RAC Day planned for February of next year. It's probably going to be more interesting for you to be able to hear from the students. And I'm very grateful that a number of them gave up some of the time to be sort of interviewed by me a couple of weeks ago now. They were the students in both our steering group and a couple that sort of really excelled in their participation on the Outright campaign. And I've got a little short interview for you to watch now, which hopefully will allow you to sort of amplify their voices. I'll mute myself while this is played. Last year, we took part in the UNICEF UK's Outright campaign, which focused on children's right to the best possible healthcare. When exploring health systems around the world, did you learn anything that surprised you?
When I researched case studies around the world, I realised how poor the healthcare systems were. It's because of UNICEF that they get vaccinations for curable illnesses and things that can easily be prevented.
I also realised how much we in the UK and other richer countries take healthcare for granted.
Why do you think it's important that young people get involved in speaking out to protect rights for all children?
When we get involved, just remember how important this is. Like, it's children's right. It can impact us and children all around the world.
It also means that, like, when we have opinions about really important things, that they're more heard, because we're going to grow up with the decisions that, like, big decisions that are made.
If no one spoke out, then nothing would change.
So when we took part in our Outright campaign, we, as a UNICEF sort of Rights Respecting School steering group, we wrote to our local MP, who is Suella Braverman, and we sent 2 letters off, one to her parliamentary office and one to her constituency office, and we got replies to both. How did it feel to get that response?
It felt nice to know that our school was being acknowledged for the work we put into UNICEF.
I felt really proud after all working together for this, that we got recognised by Suella.
I wasn't there, but I can imagine that it felt quite cool to be recognised.
So since we took part in Outright in 2022, it was back in February on our RAP day that we completed that. Have you taken any other action, either personally or as part of our UNICEF steering group, to support children's rights?
I haven't, but I would love to, because it's like children's right, but this is like, it'll be a good thing to get involved with. We're also aiming to get our gold award as soon as possible, and we have included UNICEF rights in our assemblies and by talking to parents and spreading the word with our trustees and students, then we're getting the school more involved, and that means that hopefully other people around in this area will start aiming for the UNICEF award as well.
So as a school, you guys are now in year 9. Our current year 8s are going to be taking part in Outright in February of this year, which is looking at sort of protecting the environment. Are you guys going to be able to support that event for the school, given that you've already had that experience?
I think so. I think considering that we've already done it, it's a lot easier to help other people with it. Yeah.
We'll help other children learn about our environment and help them to understand it and hopefully spread it to their parents.
Okay, thank you very much. Could you put the next slide on for me, please? Perfect, thank you. So it was just sort of really nice as an opportunity to get the students involved in sort of the day-to-day through their presentation as well. And a couple of the children that you saw on that video have both been in the steering group and were instrumental in planning and making sure that the peers were able to take part in the Outright campaign as well. It allowed us to raise awareness of Article 24 in the Convention on the Rights of the Child. That one tells us that every child around the world has the right to the best possible healthcare, clean water to drink, healthy food, and a clean and safe environment to live in, no matter who they are or where they come from. And as we sort of mentioned already, they wrote to our local MP and the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office to explain why having stronger health systems is so important, and raised awareness of the struggles faced by some children around the globe. Would you be able to move forward one slide for me, please? So I now want to talk a little bit about logistics. So the challenge I had in putting the Outright campaign together for the school was that for our RAC days, which stand for Resilience, Aspiration and Kindness, our school values, I haven't got a dedicated staff group. I'm the head of humanities. I couldn't just say, oh, history and geography will take this, because on these days, the students tend to stay with their own tutor. So I was needing to work with a completely different team of staff outside of the normal faculty. And I also wanted them to have something concrete to take away at the end of it. So I think the reason that I was asked to sort of speak today is because what I think I did quite a good job of was personalising the Outright resources, which are wonderful and provided by the charity, to our own setting, to just sort of show how we can adapt them. And the way that we approached that was sort of twofold. And first of all, all students across year 8 all had one of these booklets, and you can see that on the next slide if you just zoom forward for me. Thank you very much. That's just a screenshot of the booklet, and I am more than happy to share these. And at the end of the session, if anybody wants them, if you want my details, or we can send them out, I'm sure I'm happy to do that. So this was a booklet that the students could take away and do something physical with during the RAC days, as they had 4 hours working on this. And it also then fed into sort of the conversations I was hoping that they'd have in tutor time, as well as sort of on our next steps on our journey, which were about writing the letter, encouraging children to come and join the steering group as well. And the two things work really nicely hand in hand for that reason. If you just go back one slide for me as well, please. The second sort of part to that is the booklet existed for the students, but for the staff, I needed to create something that was very, very simple to follow. I mean, there's nothing worse as a teacher than, you know, you've been asked to cover a subject outside of your own discipline. You're not 100% confident of what that is. You're sent a random PowerPoint and you've got, 10 minutes till you've got to sort of teach it. So I'm sure that a few staff here, sort of teaching staff, will know that sort of pain that, you know, now and again we all go through. But I tried to make it as absolutely straightforward as possible for the staff delivering it and for the children. And as you can see on each PowerPoint slide there, there's a little number in a blue circle. So that corresponded to the page number in the booklet that the students had, just to keep it really, really simple for them. You can see that I've used sort of different colouring for where there is a task for them to do in the booklet, different things that are discussion based. And there's nothing here that's revolutionary. It was just a case of putting together the resources that already did exist and sort of brought everything together. If you just skip forward 2 for me, please. There we go. So there you can see an example of sort of how the students filled it in. And if you did want to see a little bit more about how the students took part in Outright, on our school's Facebook page, there's a post there that I think the hyperlink will be shared with you if you want to have a look at some other examples. So I appreciate I've not got a lot of time and I'm just trying to share with you a couple of sort of snapshots of it. If you just jump forward 1 more for me, please. And then here's the letter that we got from Suella Braverman, who is our local MP in Fareham. And it sort of responded to those concerns. And as you saw in the video, the students felt really empowered by the fact that, you know, somebody who's a cabinet minister has taken the time to write back to them following our Outright campaign. And there was a real buzz about the steering group after we received this letter because of the positive impact that they sort of felt from it, that their voice had been heard. And that sort of links directly to the last session as well, who are doing some wonderful things. And I've written down some notes myself to take away, but it was really lovely that I can sort of see the other side of it as well, getting the response from our local MP and the Cabinet Office as well. If you could just skip forward for me once more, please. And then this is sort of the highlight for me. In the video that showed some of my students, you'll remember that there were 2 girls that were identical twins. They actually took it upon themselves, the wonderful children, they took it upon themselves. When we sort of finished putting the letter together to Suella, the children took it upon themselves, these 2 girls and one of their friends, Adrita, to actually make their own little mini version of my booklet for the MP to take away, which was sort of really cute and really lovely for them to do that. And he said, well, sir, you know, we've taken part in Outright, we've been involved in the planning and the execution of it. We'd like to follow through a little bit more with the campaign. And they put this little booklet together. I've got a paper copy of it in my hand, but these were given to all staff. The tutors in Year 8 who were involved particularly got them. And we sent a few copies of it off to Suella as well, with our sort of letter in the pack that we put together. And that was just sort of so lovely that they did that off their own back. Do we have the Facebook link? Could it be shared in the chat? Yeah, I'll put that there in a second for you. But yeah, it was just absolutely wonderful to take part in, and I'm really excited about how we can sort of build on it this year. The sort of my reflection of it was that in 2023, I thought that 3 hours would be enough. And actually, I don't think it is. I think my life would be easier next time to manage it in 4, because I think it was all very well and good me bringing it back together afterwards and writing as a steering group to Suella, but I think it'd be much more powerful if all the children had the opportunity to do that. So that's how I'm trying to improve it myself for the spring next year, focusing back on climate change. Would you be able to just move forward for me? I think that's it then. Yeah, so that's it. Thank you very much for listening to me speak there. And I just want to say thank you, and that I'm immensely grateful and feel really privileged to be asked to speak today. Thank you for the opportunity. All right.
Thank you, Wesley. No, that was so interesting, and just to hear the enthusiasm in your voice, but from the young people as well, for kind of thinking about campaigning and how this really upskills the young people that you work with as well is fantastic. So it's been really wonderful to hear 2 quite different examples of how schools have approached campaigning, and I think we wanted to share that there isn't one key way for every school to approach campaigning, and to show that you can adapt it to your school, to your curriculum, to the opportunities that your children bring to you as well, which is fantastic. Just a reminder of that kind of definition of campaigning. Campaigning is to work in an organised and active way towards positive change on an issue and influence those in power to act. So it's about that change, and who are those duty bearers? What is the root cause of an issue? Helping children to explore that. and thinking about how children's voices matter, that children have a right to say and share what they think, but also that they can make a real difference through this process. So Q&A, there are lots of questions coming through for the three of you. Again, lots of questions. We haven't got a lot of time, but it would be lovely to kind of get answers to some of those questions. If I can put the first question out to, let's go to Whitney with the first one. So the first one is, pupil voice groups often suggest fundraising campaigns. But as a school, we're limiting these because families are financially stretched at the moment. Do you have any tips for increasing children's awareness and appreciation of campaigning and taking action in different ways?
I think for us, using the curriculum, whether it's something that's already existing and giving the children an opportunity to build on that. But if you do have the chance, I think the way we've been most successful is in intertwining our campaigns into the curriculum itself, where the children can then take a day of action. So it isn't necessarily about raising funds, but it is about raising the awareness and having that understanding of whatever the issue is that the children want to learn about. I realise and appreciate that campaigning does take time, and planning and all of those things that we are so limited to in the teaching profession. However, the impact is amazing, and actually when the children have a deep understanding of what it is they are actually taking action on, it then empowers them to want to do it again, and that they can raise another issue a second time or a third time to move that forward. So days of action have been quite a powerful way of spreading that awareness within the community.
Brilliant, thank you, Whitney. Another one that came through on the Q&A is about time, and we always have lots of demands on our time, but with demands on teachers' time in the school timetable, how do you fit everything in? Wesley, Whitney, would either of you like to come in on that one? Becky,
Yeah,
shall I come to you first? Yep, go on.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The key thing is that I had to be really, really firm with my own time management, first of all. So Tuesday evening is my UNICEF club, my steering group. That's our time when we meet. We're really lucky that we finish at sort of 2:40. So I've got my steering group every Tuesday until 3:30. The vast majority of children do have some sort of extracurricular club at least one day a week. But by sort of safeguarding that time and making sure that I'm not doing anything else like any other clubs or detentions or whatever in that time slot every week, it just means able to keep that sort of continuity going. A lot of the time it's about sort of seeing what the children want to bring to me to plan, but having the structure, you know, someone that's relatively new to the award, having the structure of the the action plan document that we had for Silver last year was really, really useful, because we were able to keep coming back to it and then reflecting on it every sort of every term. And yeah. it was at a meeting that I had, with Helen, when I was like, look, I think that we're almost here with it, and she sort of pushed me to book it in sooner, the accreditation, for that reason.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, so earmarking that time and supporting your children and young people you work with to maybe step up and take ownership over some of that action as well, where they can. One final question before we take a break, if that's all right. Becky, we've got a question for you, if that's okay. Which campaign to date are you most proud of, frustrated with, surprised you the most? So there's three different options in there, if you can, or one if you want to pick. So which one are you most pleased about, frustrated with, or surprised you the most?
Okay. So I've worked in campaigning for nearly 15 years, but I'll focus on my UNICEF UK experience. Mm-hmm. It's hard to say what's pleased me the most. I think it depends. There's lots of elements of various campaigns that have pleased me, but I think the thing that I get a real kick out of is when we find a new way, either within our UNICEF UK walls or within like the adults that support us as campaigners, or when children do really cool things, when we find new ways to show MPs, politicians, how people in the UK are feeling about certain issues. So 2 examples of that. The first is we ran a campaign on air pollution in the UK back in 2018. And people in their local communities could go and measure the air pollution, and that was such a great way to engage them and then give them something to write to their MP about that was really personal to them. Another example is with the Baby and Toddler Guarantee Early Moments Matter campaign. Parents of children around the country have been leaving us voice notes to talk about their experiences and why this campaign matters to them. And the stories are so personal. People are really trusting us with that information to share that with MPs, parliamentarians, and that means an awful lot, pleases me an awful lot that people trust UNICEF UK with that. Frustrated by, you know what, Wesley, hearing the work that your school has done on child health was just so inspiring to me, because the thing that I've always been most frustrated by is campaigning on child health, not through Outright, but that we've also campaigned on it more broadly than Outright with adults in the UK before, and getting the UK government to care about it, getting the public to care about it, which is really understandable. We've been hit by pandemics and climate change, cost of living. You know, people don't have the brain space to. But sometimes I read about the things that we're talking about. You know, so children surviving beyond the age of 5, and it's really hard to see that and find ways to communicate that doesn't overwhelm people, but also inspires and empowers them and makes them angry, I guess, to want to do something. So that's, I guess, been a frustration for me that I don't feel that UNICEF UK have nailed it, but I'll be coming to Fareham Academy to find out some more about that and be inspired further. And finally, surprised by, going back to the air pollution campaign. I live in London, and we've been running the campaign for maybe 9 months, and I was strolling around the Underground and saw lots of signs from the Mayor's office in London about air pollution, and it was using our messaging and images that looked very much like our images. So it turns out that Sadiq Khan thought that what we were doing was so great that he plucked it and used it. So that was a bit of a surprise on a random Tuesday evening. So that is a really nice question to answer, so thank you for asking.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Becky. And I think just linking back to the frustrations, I think in schools you will find this as well with working with children on campaign, and Becky mentioned it in her session at the beginning that it doesn't always go the way that we want, but it's about that resilience, and I think that is one of the key skills that Becky highlighted that we can strengthen in our children and young people through this process of campaigning, and it adds such value to the curriculum. So thank you to all three of you, and thank you so much to the speakers earlier on as well in relation to safeguarding. It's been a really lovely session to be part of, and some really wonderful examples and good practice that we've heard this afternoon. So thank you to you all. We have another break. We've gone over a little bit, but if you want to get up, stretch your legs, and come back at 3:15, we have the next session coming on at 3:15, and that's going to be a discussion with our panel. So we look forward to seeing you all back then. Thank you all very much.